morning. I'm very happy to see you again. As we let the last people in, like yesterday, we're going to start the day with a meditation. So I would like to ask Doina to introduce to us today's meditation. The black one. Yeah. Yeah. But you don't have to have that one so close.
Good morning.
Hey.
Okay, awesome. Today's meditation is going to look at the world we live in, is going to look at the cultural and social differences, and encourages you to think about how our movement actually can shape our communities and move them forward. We have a series of photos on the screen, and I further invite you, as Joao said yesterday, to open your eyes, your ears, and your hearts.
Thank you for that, Doina. I would like now to invite our host committee for any announcements.
Okay, hi guys, how are you doing today? Are you good? Oh, you don't sound too well. How are you doing? Thank you, that's what I want to hear. So we hope you had enjoyable staying here at Rogla. If you need anything, my team will do our best to provide you with whatever you need. You can find us at the information desk or on the first floor. So you know how our t-shirts say, you can do it all? Okay. Like as been said yesterday, we hope you all like the bottles from the welcome goodie bag. We would really appreciate if you use them so that we can reduce the use of plastic bottles. Water is drinkable, so you can just drink that water. We will be putting a list of all of you today where you will have to check your departure information. It is on the list that you will also mark whether you are going to the inter-event. So, once the list is up at the information desk, please drop by and mark where are you going this Friday. If you're going to the inter-event, just write inter-event. If you're going to the conference venue, write Ljubljana. Or if you're going to the airport, write airport. Is that okay? Okay. Also make sure that the departure information is correct, regardless of whether you're leaving this Friday or at any other point until 17th of August. Finally, I hope you had fun last night at the opening ceremony and in the disco. Tonight we have a Slovenian evening, coming up with a special Slovenian dinner and an evening program in the big white tent outside. After that, we invite you to go to the disco, which is just outside the hall, as you probably noticed yesterday. There's more to the toilet door than just toilet. So you can also access it from. No, you cannot also access it. That's right. Okay, that's it for now. Have a good day, and let us know if you need anything. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. I also have a couple of announcements. The youth advisor candidates should be at the plenary hall at 11 o'clock to do a final rehearsement on their speeches. The delegations who have signed up for the project fair, it's very important that you finish your project fairs before lunch or during lunch today. Today, as yesterday, we will start the session with having delegates sitting in the front. That is 1 to 2 per countries, and observers sitting in the back. During this session, we're going to change that seating, but that is the seating we start in. As you've also noticed on the program, we will have international coffee breaks. We will start with the Asia-Pacific region before lunch. And the region who is assigned for the coffee break after lunch should contact Cynthia from the World Scout Bureau. Is Cynthia here? No. Just outside, yeah. So the lady in one of the purple shirts will help you coordinate, and please contact her before lunch for the region that is hosting the coffee break in the afternoon. And it is the Arab region. I would also like to remind you, please, to try to lift your chairs when you sit down. It makes an incredible noise in this room, so whenever you come in or you leave the room, please try to lift up your chair while you move it back and forth. It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference for the sound in the room. And just to clarify Eva's announcement regarding the water. Here in Slovenia, the water in the tap is drinkable. So this is the reason why we have provided you with a reusable bottle made of glass. So whenever you have a break or you start in the morning, you can just fill your bottle from the tap in your room, or in the toilets around the building. You should only be aware that the toilets right outside the hall have one of those taps with both warm and cold water, so it's not so nice to take from that one because it's lukewarm or warm. Any other announcements from anyone? Any questions? I see none. Excellent. So again, good morning everyone. It's my pleasure to begin this second day with the session on global trends. As we heard in the speeches last night during the opening ceremony, we live in an ever-changing world. And this affects us as scouts and how we organize ourselves, which program we deliver and how we deliver it, and how we interact with the communities that we are a part of. Just to give a few examples of how it affects us. The theme of this session is Society Changing Scouts. And we want you to explore which global trend your country is affected by and how you see scouting respond to this. We will start with some inspirational input before we spend time in the international teams. And after the coffee break, we will break into working groups, but I will explain more about this later. To begin, we will start with a short video that gives you an introduction to two of the themes that are mentioned in the Global Trends Report that I talked about yesterday, and that is available at the forum documents or the conference documents on your USB stick and on our Facebook group. I would now like to invite Mr. Alhendawi, UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, to the stage to deliver his keynote speak. Mr. Alhendawi. Mr. Alhendawi has many years of experience with youth policy making and in NGOs working for young people before he was appointed by Ban Ki-moon and started his work in January 2013. Mr. Alhendawi has worked with the World Bank, the League of Arab States, UNFPA, and Save the Children, and has now taken on this important position as the Special Envoy on Youth. And we are grateful that he has decided to be our keynote speaker in this capacity. Please welcome again Mr. Alhendawi.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you hear me? Good morning. Good morning. Well, I'll speak as loud as possible, so and I'll try to be as slow as possible for the translation. No promises, but I'll try. Well, good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me. And it's an amazing gathering for Scouts, for young people from the Scouts family. Do you hear me? No? Okay. How about now? Okay. I was told not to speak very close to the mic. Okay. I think this should be work. Should be fine. And what I want to say, it's a great pleasure that for me and for the United Nations to be present with you today this very important forum. And the fact that the Scouts for the 12th Youth Forum is gathering young people from all over the world speak to the commitment of the Scouts International to bring young people to the decision-making processes. This morning we were talking about the Youth Advisor program as well, and the Youth Advisor to the Scouts. And something I learned with time, that it takes sometimes a lot of efforts to convince decision-making bodies to bring young people on board. But once they are on board, they start wondering why they have not done it way before. And I think what we all learn, that sometimes it takes a lot of courage to bring young people to become decision makers or part of the highest decision-making bodies. But that's something would enhance at the end of the day the work of any organization. The reason I'm starting with that, to tell you that the United Nations, we have introduced a program called Youth Advisory Board to the UN country teams, where the UN operates in many countries around the world. And we were trying to establish a youth advisory board at the national level. And at the beginning, I was traveling and explained to my colleagues in the UN country teams the need to establish a youth advisory board. One of these countries is Sri Lanka. So I was kind of explaining and making the case that it's time for us to have a youth advisory board in Sri Lanka with young people. And it took me a little while to convince them. I think they were convinced, but also to explain how we could do it. Then I visited Sri Lanka 10 months later, and the head of the UN country team there, he told me, do you know what? I thought at the beginning that we were doing this for young people. Then we realized that this is the best thing we have done to ourselves, actually, because to provided us with the ability to validate a lot of our thoughts and to have a direct connection with citizens around the world, especially in Sri Lanka in that particular case. So youth participation seems extremely important, and I really commend the Scouts for keeping young people involved in the decision-making processes, and at the end it's a network of many young committed people around from all over the world. I was asked to speak about trends, and I think the video played very fast, but I had the opportunity to read the report with the youth trends. And if I ask you today if you agree or disagree with me, you can shout. Do you think education is a top priority for young people around the world? Do you think employment and decent job opportunities is a top priority for young people? But do you think honest and responsive government is one of your top priorities today? Do you think healthcare system that is tailored to your needs is a top priority? And do you think the issue of peace and security is a top priority as well? Good. Well, this is exactly the top 5 findings from my world survey. Young people from all over the world, they made education their number 1 priority. And they made it across all countries around the world. If you go to my world survey, which is a survey run by the United Nations in the lead up to the post-2015 development agenda, to ask citizens around the world about their priorities, education came first. And it doesn't matter which country, all young people around the world, they put education as number 1 priority for them. But as we speak about these 5 trends, just want to take you on a tour a bit about the situation of young people today. And you see how much you could relate to these figures. If we speak of education, do you know how many children today are out of school? Show a number. Say something. How many? Make a guess. No, in terms of number, currently, the Millennium Development Goals have been very successful in getting many kids back into school. But yet, as of today, there are 57 million children out of school. As of today, we still speak about 75 million young persons who are still not in education, training, or employment opportunities. As we believe in the importance of education, we all realize that it's not enough today to only speak about education without doubling the investments in education. There are some serious challenges facing young people in the education sector. And from the early and the primary education to post-primary education and higher education. This is one of the areas that still require a lot of work and more investments to be made. But as of today, we are talking about 57 million children out of school. As of today, we are talking about 75, as I said, million young persons who are unemployed. And when I think about unemployment today, I think about a young man. I don't want to depress you, by the way. And I know you are all still either studying or transitioning to the labor market. But one of the slides we're talking about the transition. And if you think about the transition, as we're talking about transition from education to the labor market, this is becoming more difficult than any time before. We are in Europe today, and I personally argue that this generation in Europe is the most talented generation in Europe's history. Europe has never had before a generation that is this much mobile, or they have this much skilled. They speak 3-4 languages, they have 2 degrees, and yet some of them, until they are in their late 20s, have not even had one job contract, paid contract. This is a very challenging situation for many young people around the world. And the situation in Africa, Asia, and many other parts of the world is very much the same. From the region where I come from, the Arab countries, has today one of the highest youth unemployment rate in the world. And you all know the situation of youth unemployment. This is one of the challenges facing young people, and it will continue to grow. In fact, projections to the future, in the next 15 years, the world has to create more than 670 million jobs for young people. So as you are doing this transition, you are challenged by a very competitive scene out there for finding job opportunities. That's to speak about employment. And sometimes I ask myself, who can create 670 million jobs? Governments can create this number? What do you think? Private sector? Well, I like the term public-private partnership, but believe me, even with public-private partnership, 600 or around 700 million jobs will not be created. So I'll tell you what is the way forward. It's not so depressing. There is a way forward indeed. We need to strengthen this cooperation, but we need to make sure to put youth issues at the center of any development processes. We need to make sure that we put youth at the center of the national budget. If we plan policies, we have to make sure that the potential of young people is being unleashed by policies and by investments. And you also have a responsibility, because there's something many people could debate, but I believe that the way forward is not about seeking jobs. It's about inventing jobs. There are no jobs to be sought, by the way, in many cases. You have to take risk, and you have to establish businesses. You have to find more innovative ways to create your own business or to take risk. I know in many cultures taking risk is not something perceived as a good thing. You have to do a very calculated moves in your life. But we have to. And many young people are afraid of failure. They said, I could not open anything that could fail, and I don't want to be labeled as a loser. But there's no failure. There's no. What does it mean to be a young person if you don't take risk when it comes to starting your career? And even if you fail in your 20s, you will be able always to come back. But this is a serious challenge for me. And every time I speak or we meet or we discuss youth issues, I always think about the challenge of youth unemployment and the challenge of relevant education for young people. Speak about health issues and the need to offer young people more services that is tailored to their needs. We're still far from that, and we need to do more. And governments, they need to do more. But speaking of participation, which is one of the honest and responsive government, in fact, if we to learn anything about what happened in the world in the past 3-4 years, is that this generation is no longer demanding to vote every 4 years in elections. Democracy is being transformed somehow, because democracy is it's really not about voting every 4 years. Democracy is about direct interaction in all issues concerning your lives. Now, what do you do on Facebook and Twitter? If you open Facebook and Twitter, you will find plenty of political issues being discussed today. Every time I go to Facebook, I'll find like most of my friends are debating political issues, sharing political stories. Those who are the same in the election day will not vote, by the way. They will not, some of them, they will not even stand in a line to vote. Not all of them. Sometimes I come to a conclusion, and let me know what you think. Sometimes I come to a conclusion where young people are interested in politics as such, but they are not interested in political institutions or political processes. And I don't always blame young people, by the way, because you interact, you debate, you discuss, you do everything virtually, online. And as once a wise man said, he said, everything is in the digital era, and the only things that remain the analog is politics, which I found it sadly true. It is still in the analog, and in many of the how politics is structured today is not that much appealing to young people. And that's what I try to tell politicians all the time. You should not only blame young people, but you should think about it. If you live in America and you can vote for American Idol on your mobile, why you should stand in a line for 4 or 5 hours to vote for your candidate? This is not a science fiction, by the way. This is where we are heading. It's a matter of time. And the question is about how to get back politics to be more interesting for young people. Back in 2010, Han is here from Egypt. I was living in Egypt. And in 2010, in December 2010, I attended the launching of a survey called the National Youth Survey in Egypt. I mean, the findings, basically some trends about young people in Egypt at that time. Again, the date is December 2010. And one of the findings was, the shocking one, was that only 2% of Egyptian youth participate in any voluntary work. Imagine, only 2% of Egyptian youth participate in any voluntary work. That was literally 3 weeks before the Egyptian revolution. 3 weeks later, Egyptians, they took to the street, and hundreds of thousands of them. And I remember at that time when the presentation was made about trying to explain the number of 2%. I remember the official who tried to explain the number. She said, maybe because they are careless, they don't care. They're lazy, they don't like to participate. And after 3 weeks, I think the response came very strong in the street, whether they are careless and lazy or not. And what I learned from that story, that young people participate only when they are convinced this is a meaningful participation. If you convince them, they participate. If you don't, they don't. And that 2% was not a sign of carelessness, by the way. It was a sign of a protest. And that's sometimes what I tell many young people, or even decision makers, and when they receive the findings of any survey, sometimes they miss to read numbers, and they don't know how to read these numbers. That 2% is indeed one of these examples where that number was misread. But that's the issue of participation and the challenge of bringing young people to politics and to have them actively participating. Of course, you all know that we can't talk only about virtual participation and communication technologies because we still have a long way to go to empower all citizens around the world to be able to access this to internet and broadband connection. You know that 2/3 of our world today, 2/3 of the world's population are still offline, by the way. Around 70% of the world population are still offline. So as we move forward, we come to the risk with having like a bubble life somehow, where everything is happening virtually, but yet the others who are committed to leave no one behind, they might be left way behind, in fact, because the gap is getting bigger and bigger. So this is one of the challenges that the UN is trying to work. So that's to speak about the situation of young people. And I do agree with the trends you have seen in the slides, that young people in general, they have more difficulties in transition. Always in Egypt, I would say, just because it's an easy country where I lived there for 3 years. Speaking about the transition, do you know how much it costs a young Egyptian to do the transition from being single to form family? Just getting married, basically. Do you know how much it costs? According to one of the studies, it costs the young Egyptian to get married the equivalent of his or her salary for 27 months. Yeah. Congratulations, by the way. You made it. You made it. You made it. You should thank the scouts as well. So you see, it's not a mechanical transition. And that's what I try to remind people. It's not as easy as you could imagine. Like, you finish with the school, you go to find a job, you get a job, you go to form a family or get married. It's not that easy anymore. And even in places where you have a social solidarity system that could facilitate this transition, it's still very difficult. Another challenge that I'm not here to bring only bad news, by the way, but I want you to remember as you meet today in an international forum for the Scouts, the situation of our fellow youth around the world. Do you know that 1.5 billion out of the 7 billion on our planet today, they live in conflict zones or fragile situations? The issue of peace and security is extremely important for young people today. Not only in conflict zones, by the way, in many places where they live in many places where they live in a situation where there's a pretty high crime rate in this country or that, and they can't even, if I tell them, go and open your business, they said, it's not secure enough to do that. And safety, stability, security, peace are, in many parts of the world, are rare commodities. 1.5 billion, and just to think about it, you all know the MDGs, right? I like to think that you know it, so. You should know it. The Millennium Development Goals, that is coming to an expiry date in 500 days almost from now, with 8 goals. Do you know that the 1.5 billion where they live now, their countries will not be able to achieve not even one goal of the MDGs by 2015? If that tells us something, that there's a clear correlation between safety, stability, security, and achieving development goals. So that's very relevant to also your program of Messengers of Peace and the need for young people to play an active role in peace promotion. It honestly saddens me that in many cases young people are being portrayed as the perpetrators of conflict and being deployed at the forefront of any conflict. And rarely you will find young people invited to peace delegation when they have peace talks. I have followed that in the past 3 years, and it's very rare that you will find young people invited to the official peace delegations when they have peace negotiations. So I think you need to speak up, and you need to play a role in peace building and peace promotion. You can't only be perceived as the perpetrators of conflict. You can't be perceived only as the troublemakers and the burden in development. You can't be perceived only as the ones who are troublemakers and they are the ones who are behind any social unrest. You have to be seen as the ones who are protecting peace and security, promoting it. And we should not allow for this generation to be deployed for conflicts, but rather to be real messengers of peace. Today you have 1.8 billion young persons on this planet. This is the largest generation of youth the world has ever known. In fact, half of the world population, imagine, half of the world population under 25 years of age. So that clearly says that we have a great opportunity, but also it could be a great challenge and threat if we don't do more. Coming to my work and the work of the United Nations, well, against all these numbers and figures, it's not a surprise that the United Nations decided to make youth issues one of the top priorities. In fact, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in his second term, when he was re-elected as Secretary General of the United Nations, he decided that youth and women is one of the top priorities for the UN. And with that, we put together, for the first time, one strategy for the UN in youth issues, bringing together 40 entities, the big ones. Do you know, I'm sure you know, UNICEF, WHO, ILO, UNDP, and all the other agencies. They all came together in a one coordinated policy to work in youth issues and to push governments to do more for youth. So in my work and our work, we try to increase youth participation in the United Nations. And we do this in a variety of ways. I started my remarks by talking about the youth advisory panels that we introduced in some countries around the world, but also by encouraging more regional platforms. And also, for the first time, at the United Nations, we have something called the ECOSOC Youth Forum, where young people, they come with member states to debate economic and social issues. I'm also thankful to the Scouts for being active participants in the last ECOSOC Youth Forum. We try to introduce more venues for participation with the United Nations, and I think the post-2015 development debate is one of these areas. So for me to tell you why you should be involved and how to be involved, right? I think you all appreciate that. Why you should be involved? Because as I said yesterday, basically we all have like dual citizenship somehow. You are the citizen of Sweden, I'm the citizen of Jordan, from Costa Rica, Brazil, but we all should feel that we belong to the globe as well, and that we are global citizens. Being a global citizen means that you realize that we have common values and shared values. These are the universal values. Being a global citizen means that you realize you cannot tackle most of the challenges today in the world without coming together and being actively participating as a global citizen. The reason why I was inviting all young people to go to my world survey and to participate in the post-2015 development agenda is the same exact reason that I would invite anyone to go to election in his or her national election duties, basically. Because at the national level, you have to choose who is going to represent you. And at the global level, you have to be part of choosing what would be the next development goals that the entire world will be working to achieve. Most of the challenges we have today, and think about it, you might think I'm too small to think about these global challenges. I'm insignificant somehow to address these challenges. But believe me, just a few years ago, I was thinking exactly the same. I thought, who am I to contribute to all these challenges or to try to be part of a global effort to. But it happens because we all have to play a role in this. Climate change, as I said yesterday, is an issue could not be tackled anymore at the border of a national country or national boundaries. Basically, it requires a global coordinated efforts. And most of the challenges we face, they are deeply, connected, multidimensional, and very complex by nature. And they would require coordinated efforts, as I said, bringing people from all over the world. And that's where the Scouts, I think, should come forward. From a network of young people, 40 million, and I know that you have ambitions to even double this number in the next years. For this network to work in tandem with the United Nations and to be able to contribute to combat some of these challenges. When we speak about climate change and environmental protection, I think that's in the heart of the Scouts, by the way. The way you organize your activities and the places you choose and the way you treat the environment, you started this way before many others as well. And I think you should continue leading the way, especially in the debate around sustainability. This word is not sustainable, and according to one of the studies, says if we continue to consume in the same way we consume today, by the way, we would need at least 3 planets to accommodate us. And as the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Jan Eliasson, says, we always talk about Plan B, but there's no planet B. There's only one planet, so we better figure out a way to live in this planet. So, how to be involved? Again, by organizing your priorities and by organizing some of your initiatives to be aligned with the work of the United Nations. We often talk about the Millennium Development Goals or about the post-2015 Development Agenda as United Nations Development Agenda. And I don't think this is the United Nations Development Agenda. I think this is everybody's development agenda. And the United Nations, of course, represent everyone and for everyone, but we should all feel the ownership. I like to call it not even agenda. I like to call it development contract, because it is a contract for me that we should all subscribe to this contract and be actively participant in achieving these development goals. And as any contract, the contract what defines usually? Responsibilities, duties, and gives also what will be the benefits, right? We should think about the development agenda in the same mentality, thinking about what would be our responsibilities to translate these goals. And I would like to invite you all on 18th of August this month to mark 500 days to the MDGs, to do action in your community and see what you can contribute to mark the 500 days of the MDGs. Next month in September, we will have a global summit for climate change, where you can all be actively participating, remotely or from New York. And whether you are interested in employment, health, or participation at the United Nations, there are plenty of youth programs today that could allow participants to be actively involved and participate with the work of the United Nations. But remember, the United Nations start at your community and your country. So you have to check what the UN country team in your country is doing now and how you can work with your country team. In many of your activities, I assure you that the doors of the United Nations will be always open to cooperate and work very closely with the Scouts, whether at the national, regional, or international level. I invite you to go to our website. If you don't know the website, it's un.org/youth-envoy, where you will find in a section called Opportunities at the UN, plenty of opportunities for engagement and work with the United Nations, where you can get involved or you can share the work for others who are interested in working with the United Nations. Some of you came to me, and with that I conclude. Some of you came to me and told me, my dream is to work for the United Nations. I want to work for the United Nations. And sometimes when I travel, I feel I should bring some forms and applications where I can collect some CVs, because I always find this a question coming to me, and it just makes my heart bigger when people around the world, they want to be part of the United Nations. It's amazing to see how the amount of enthusiasm young people have to work with the UN. But here's the news. The United Nations hire less than McDonald's, by the way. Is it true? You know McDonald's, right? Sure you know. And yet I never walked into a McDonald's restaurant without waiting in a line. And sometimes I just think about it. If they hire more than the UN and always have to wait in a line to get a sandwich, so how we could, at the United Nations, with limited capacity at a time of economic crisis, to accommodate all of the world's needs and all the requests and demands that coming especially from conflict zones and from many parts of the world. I'll tell you how. By working with the United Nations, you don't have to be employed by the United Nations. All what you have to do is to believe in the universal values of the United Nations, believe in the goals and objectives that the UN is trying to achieve to make this world a better place, and align whatever you do at the national, local level, and make it in tandem with the United Nations. This is how we could contribute to global peace, security, trust, and dignity for all. And this is what the world today needs us to do. And this is what many young people around the world are expecting us to do. So if you are empowered enough to be here, if you are fortunate enough to be representing today this massive network of the Scouts around the world, to be here today, just take a moment to reflect about the seat you are taking today as representative somehow for hundreds of thousands of young people who could not make it here. So let's speak on their behalf as well, and speak on the behalf of their concerns and aspirations, and continue working together for a world of dignity and just for all. That's where the United Nations, and that's why the United Nations next year, when it's celebrating the 70th anniversary, will only be growing younger, like the Scouts, with your commitments and will be only fueled by your energy and your ability to work with the United Nations. The UN should not be perceived as an organization, should be perceived as a manifestation for the progress of humanity at large, where we are able finally, after thousands of years of existence of human beings on this planet, to come to try to solve our differences under one umbrella. It doesn't always work, by the way, but this is to remind everyone that this is the best we have got so far. We have to protect it. We have to make sure that there are no setbacks, but rather continue pushing forward for a world of dignity, human dignity, just and universal rights that enjoyed by everyone. And I count on your commitments, and I count on the Scouts' leadership in this. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alhendawi. Thank you very much for your inspirational words. I would like you to stay on stage for a bit as we have time for some question and answers. I think it's very obvious from the examples and data that you have provided with us that the society that we live in is changing, and that we as Scouts need to be aware and active in how we want to respond to these global changes, global trends. I will now give the floor for questions. I know my colleague Doina would like to start, and while she asks her question, I would want each of you to think of anything you would like to ask Mr. Alhendawi, and we will do question rounds after Doina has asked her question. Thank you.
How do you see in concrete steps a closer cooperation between the Scouts and the UN? Thank you.
Well, we're discussing this with the leadership and the Scout International Committee about how we could strengthen our cooperation in youth issues. I think we need to acknowledge that this cooperation already exists, and we have it. And we, Scout is an active observer and with the ECOSOC status at the UN since many, many years. But there are always opportunities to take this cooperation forward, especially at a time where we're setting the new development agenda of the United Nations. And I know that you are engaged also in the planning for the new cycle. And I think this is a very important opportunity to find synergies between the two processes. And for the Scouts, I would ask you what I hope as Ahmed in the first place from the Scouts internationally. 40 million young persons who are committed to work towards these values and active members of the Scouts. And believe me, to be active member of the Scouts, it means a lot, because you digested these values very well and you really believe in this. It's a huge thing. We don't have many 40 million young persons who are organized in our world today. We don't have that, basically. Think about it. How many other 40 millions in the world are organized across borders? You rarely find this. So you have the structure, you have your founding fathers, I would say, and the many people who contributed to this process, and you are standing today with the greatest strength, great ability to build over the legacy of the past, and also to project what you could add in the future. What I would say, the UN's today is very much open to this, because the post-2015 development agenda, and my personal wish is in the day that the post-2015 development agenda is endorsed, which will be in September 2015, the Scouts internationally will come with one unified, strong message saying how the Scouts, the 40 million of the Scouts, who hopefully by then will be even more, will be working to make sure that the Millennium Development Goals are not a science fiction goals, but rather something that we all could achieve. You know something I believe in, I mean, you like science fiction, right? I like social fiction. I am somebody who believes that sending extreme poverty to a museum could be possible in 15 years. So for a young man who's 15 years from now, if they want to learn about extreme poverty, they should visit a museum to know what does that mean. Because this world has enough resources, by the way, for everyone. We might not have enough distribution mechanisms to make everybody enjoy these resources. But believe me, extreme poverty is a shame in humanity today. Extreme poverty for people who cannot find even something to eat on a daily basis, this is a shame. And we should not accept that. We need to make sure that these goals could continue building over what the humanity has achieved so far, and we could take this forward in the future. Post-2015 development agenda is a very clear example. I'm also looking forward to continue the discussion with the colleagues from the Scout Bureau to see what we could plan and program for the future together. And again, the fact that wanted to be here is to signal this message that we are here to cooperate and to work with the Scouts. And I hope in the next report you will hear about more venues of cooperation. But as you debate as well, I would love to hear your thoughts about this, how the UN could take a more active role in playing and partnering with the Scouts in your work. So I would throw this back to you and as a homework, and I hope as a result of your forum, you could bring me some ideas about where and how the UN could work with you. And the UN is a huge organization, but we will be able to move it with young people. That's the Secretariat commitment to youth around the world. So please think about it. I'm looking to Philippe as well. I look forward to hear about some of your thoughts about how we could take this forward. And let's think big. Huh? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. I see a couple of hands now. We will take 3 questions at a time. So we will start from the front. I have noted Spain, Sudan, and Malaysia.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. I'm Ahmed from Sudan. Okay, thank you. So first of all, I would like to give you one of the solution. Now, Scouts work in the conflict area in Messenger of Peace projects. We work in very sensitive places when the government and armies they can't be there. Even the NGOs they can't be there, but the Scout always there. They work hard to build the peace and to awareness people about many of the things. So this is one of the things that Scout can do it for the UN and can help many peoples. Normal people they can't be there. So Scout everywhere, and they are a huge power. They can control many things. So you can take that as example. My question is, how the UN look for the peer-to-peer education, especially in the conflict and far area, and how that can, or how the UN can help those youth to know their rights and to talk about themselves and to express themselves, and also how they can avoid all of that problems around them and know how to use this huge power. Thank you.
Spain?
So I would like to add something. So what you have just said, that young people is not interested in politics. I don't agree, but I think it's more the corruption that we are seeing all around. what make us just go one step back. So what you do propose for changing that the image we have right now of politics?
Thank you. Malaysia?
Yes. Hello. Hi, Ahmad. I'm Hafiz. I'm from Malaysia. Just want to ask, United Nations has heavily criticized on its roles to help sustain peace in the conflict areas. What measure has been taken to overcome the criticism, and how does United Nations really work on it? I believe this effort is beyond politics. That the United Nations that have to work on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Please speak up in the microphone when you ask a question for the next round.
Well, thank you for the question. Starting with the messenger of peace, this is a very good example. I agree with you for the work of the Scouts and Peace Building and Peace Promotion. It is a peer-to-peer, approach. And this is just one another example for many of the projects that the Scouts is taking. Many of the Scouts, projects are basically following the peer education methodology, which at the UN also has been championed by many agencies. And here, I'm sure you know about UNFPA's work in peer education, which is one of the leading examples. And I know some of your colleagues here also, they have been part of some of these programs of peer education. I personally think it's one of the right approaches to take, especially in peace education, and challenging many of the stereotypes where you need young people to reach out to each other, to build bridges, and also it could fit in peace building and peace promotion, peace education, but also in many other issues where peer-to-peer education is a very important methodology to be applied with young people. So congratulations for your work in Sudan with Spain. I think, what I said is young people are interested in politics, but not in political institutions. That's what I said, which means they don't register in political parties. Maybe that's part of they are not convinced sometimes. They think, the way politics is structured is not the most appealing way to them. Part of that could be the corruption as well, in some places. But to a large extent, young people, are way more active in political issues outside the political structures. That's what I'm talking about. Which means, they are very active politically. They debate political issues, but not always in political parties. And if many of you here, or many other of your friends, how many how many of your friends is registered in a political party? I think the number will be very few. In some cases, not even any of your friends could be in a political party. But what I'm talking here, young people are interested in politics. Of course they are. And that's what they debate. They are interested in political issues. But I think there is a gap between the mainstream politics and the youth politics somehow, between the virtual one and the real one. There's a big gap out there. And it's getting even bigger. And you could see it's very difficult sometimes to convince young people to show up in an election and to cast their votes. I think we need to do more work. You ask me what do I think the solution would be. I think it takes efforts from the two sides. Young people, they have to be more well organized to influence the political process and the elections. But also politicians, I think they have to pay more attention for the demand of young people, to listen to them and to engage them. With the question from Hafiz about the UN work in conflict areas and peace building, it's the three pillars of the United Nations is peace and security, human rights, and development. These are the three pillars of the UN Charter. And when it comes to peace and security, you know that the mandated organ of the United Nations in that is the Security Council, mandating troops to go to tame peace in some places, peacekeepers, wherever there's peace, to be kept, in fact. It's a very difficult situation in many parts of the world. And that's one function of the United Nations, that the UN providing assistance to many parts of the world with peacekeeping operations, but we should sometimes also think about the responsibilities of all parties. The UN sometimes is being blamed about sending troops or being there in conflict. But let's remember that most of these conflicts are human-made as well. They are made by humans, human beings who created these conflicts, and then the UN is always the one to be asked to show up there and be present to maintain peace and keep peace, which I think is a function that the United Nations is proud to provide this. But in many cases, it's not as easy as we could imagine. And that's why you could think about the work of the United Nations when it comes to many of the humanitarian missions of the UN. For example, the UN Refugee Agency, the OCHA, the humanitarian coordination and providing relief work and humanitarian efforts in conflict zones and places where natural disaster has hit. And these are examples where the UN is already, involved. But when it comes to peacekeeping, you know, there's lots of politics there, and it requires mandate from the member states as well. And this is not as easy as we could imagine. So that's, I would say, one of the functions of the United Nations where you will find different views about, because people, expect more from the UN. There are limitations also, even for the United Nations, when it comes to operating these settings. And last year in Johannesburg, are you still following what we are talking about? Okay, last year, just for you to get a better idea about how people perceive and the perception of the United Nations. In Johannesburg, there were around 1,500 young people from all over the world. And they were asked, like in a similar setting, they were asked to vote any questions. One of the questions was, what do you think of the United Nations? Is the United Nations doing, is efficient enough? I think the answer was around 55%, they said no. Then the second question was, what do you think of UNICEF? Is the UNICEF doing a good job? And 95% say no, yes. And then they were asked about World Health Organization. And the answer was like 92 yes. And then the question was about the UN Refugee Agency. And they were all happy about it. And what people sometimes tend to forget, that all these agencies are part of the United Nations. I understand that in many cases, the political function or the peace and security might not be the most popular, understandably, of course. But we should not forget that, there are 40 other agencies working in employment, working in humanitarian efforts and refugees, working in children issues, women. All these agencies are doing great work, and they are risking, some of them, they are risking their lives, in conflicts just to make sure that they deliver services and opportunities. And sometimes they are all overshadowed somehow by the political disagreement. And I think for you, as you follow the United Nations, I always ask you to zoom out a bit and to think about the overall structure of the organization and the many development and the humanitarian efforts that the UN is currently doing. And you could imagine how the world would be without the United Nations. If you are a refugee in Central African Republic and there is no United Nations, believe me, life would not be pretty at all. It's not pretty now anyway, but it would not be pretty at all for you. And that's where the relevance of the United Nations. And if we think about the future is even getting more challenging in the future with many issues that would require multilateral cooperation. And I always keep bringing the issue of international trade or the debate around the climate change. You need bodies to regulate this and to allow member states to come together. So that's an overview about the different functions of the United Nations. And I understand sometimes there's a frustration in that particular element you referred to.
Thank you. We have time for one last short question. I think I saw New Zealand before. Yep. A short question and a short answer. And if you have any few closing remarks, we will end after that. Thank you. Speak loudly.
Thank you. My question for you was related to the UN Development Goals and the post-2015 goals. And for me, when I think about the Millennium Development Goals, one of the issues I see with them was they were very aspirational, but they failed to tie people down. So they were good things that people could aspire to, but when it came to commitment and accountability for the goals, I feel as though that area was lacking. Is that something that the UN will be looking at addressing with the next round of goals, and if so, how?
Yeah, this is a very good question, in fact, about the accountability and implementing the agreed goals and the Millennium Development Goals. I think we learned this very well, that we need a stronger mechanism for accountability and ensure implementation, and also financing for these goals, which is something is being debated now at the United Nations. Is extremely important here, by the way, coming ahead with debating the next development goals. And now the Sustainable Development Goals, the proposal for the Sustainable Development Goals have 17 goals with targets. I think as we are transitioning down to the next General Assembly, will be debating these particular issues. And member states are looking to the mechanism for monitoring and accountability. One of these mechanisms actually should be at the national level. I mean, the citizens and should hold their governments accountable as well for the commitments they make. And that's one layer for it. Indeed, there should be, I would say, a better system for coordination and also for looking into the implementation of the Millennium Development Goals, the post-Millennium Development Goals. But I think there are many successes came with the Millennium Development Goals. And without them, by the way, we'll never be able to talk about the post-Millennium Development Goals. Now, you see, everybody's interested in the new development agenda. And when it was introduced back in 2000, many people, they didn't understand at that time. I mean, what does it mean to have development goals? Why it's important? These should be at the national level. There's no need to put like goals at the international level. And thanks to the success and to the hard work of many, now we come to a point where everybody's convinced, not even one. I mean, I met who doubted the importance of having a new development framework internationally for sustainability and for development. And I think we are heading in that direction. Many of these questions are yet to be answered, and that's why the engagement in this coming year is extremely important, because many of your priorities, many of your questions and concerns could be addressed if it's channeled in the right directions to your national government, and also by following closely the process of the negotiations. I don't want to bore you with talking about the processes, the negotiations, and all that. But believe me, it should be ambitious, and we should make sure that the next development goals are allowing for this generation, for young people, to work and to get decent job opportunities and proper education, healthcare system. And that's what we have been fighting for, in fact, at the United Nations, to make sure that youth targets are included under many of the goals that have been introduced so far. And we succeeded to a large extent to introduce many of the key targets for young people in the new development goals. I mean, needless to say that this process is still undergoing, and we are expecting more months of negotiations. I think your involvement and for you to keep an eye open about what's happening in New York in the next year would be very important for climate change, for post-2015 development agenda, and for you to push even for that element of accountability to be very strengthening the new development goals, because again, you can't make nice commitments and just walk out. You have to be held accountable for the commitments you make, and I do share the same feeling that we do need an accountability mechanism. If I need to conclude, I would say one more time, I'm really happy to be here. It's equally important to me to be here, in fact, for the United Nations and for me personally. I'm really proud of the work of the Scouts, and I think I look out to the Scouts as a very important network of many committed individuals that have been doing amazing work, and I'm sure they will continue to do this great work. I thank all the Scouts Bureau, the members of the World Scout Committee, the advisors to the Scout Committee, the team leaders, and all the colleagues who have been working hard to make sure this event takes place, to the chairperson, and also to all of you. Philippe de Paulo. I think I don't know your full name. It was said several times yesterday, but really happy to be here, and I really hope that we'll continue to be in touch. I wish you all success in your meeting, and till soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alhendawi. Thank you for being with us during this session. Thank you for coming to Rogla to be part of our forum and to exchange ideas and experiences with us. We trust that you will continue to promote our movement within the UN and that we will continue our close collaboration. And I'm sure that everyone who is here will keep you up to the promises you said before about closer collaboration and making sure to look into further opportunities to work between the Scout movement and the UN. Before we continue the session, we have another video that gives another short introduction to the other two themes in the report. Thank you. We will now continue the session, and I will try to engage you a bit more. I can see some heads that have been nodding at the end, so I think we will need to put some more energy in the room. What I would like you to do in a few seconds is that I will need you to sit in your international teams. And I hope that I will start, wait a bit, I hope I won't start any conflicts between the teams, because as you notice, each row is only 8 chairs. So you have to sit one team, and then the next team has to sit in order on each side. I have your pictures from yesterday. Apparently Jazz Beck fell in love with their picture and kept it with them, so they only have a piece of paper. But the rest of you have your pictures up here, so whoever starts, you can mark that this is where your international team starts, and then when you have sit in line, the next one keeps off the picture, and I will know at the end when all 20 teams are in place. I will give you 3 minutes. Go. Up from the front. have spent half the time now. Left. Seconds. Please take your seats when you have found your team. Seconds. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Begin again now. Please sit down. Yeah, if this one. If it's not working, it's okay.
1, 2, test, test, test.
All right.
Test.
Thank you very much for moving quickly. We will now begin your reflections regarding the global trends. I would like you to begin with sitting by yourself for 2 minutes. And on the 4 topics that we have identified, we have health, we have education, we have economy, and we have society, security, and politics. Thank you. So thinking of these 4 topics, if you have your notebook with you, you are allowed to use it. If you don't, you can sit by yourself. I would like you to reflect a bit on what are the things that I feel in my country at the moment. Where can I see changes? Where can I see challenges in regards to trends that are happening within society? So please take 2 minutes by yourself, and if it's possible for you, please make some notes during this. Thank you. Thinking of your home country. Home country. And please do this as an individual reflection. I hear a lot of people speaking right now. Shh. Individual reflection. Yes. The 4, yes. We have health. There is education. There is society, politics, and security. And economy. Those are the 4 themes that are also mentioned in the the Global Trends Report. I have a squirrel here that misses his friends. Where are the squirrels sitting? Down there. Yes. Perfect. Okay, so I will let you continue thinking by yourself. You have 1 minute more. All right, I'll give you 10 seconds to finish what you're writing, or thinking, or both. Thank you for this. I would now like to ask you to talk to the person next to you. I would like you to talk about which of the 4 themes that you think are most present in your country if you look at your notes and your thoughts. So sit together 2 and 2 and talk about which of the 4 topics you think is most affecting your country. Thank you. Thank you for this. There's a lot of energy in the room, and I'm sure that many of you have experienced a lot of things changing in your societies, and that you both feel them on your own body, but probably also in your families and within your friends. We will have a coffee break in 5 minutes, and after the coffee break we will be working in breakout groups. And I would like you, before we go to the coffee breaks, we have to divide you into these breakout groups. I have envelopes up here, and in a minute I will ask one from each team to come up and get an envelope. Please just count your team. I have different number of tickets, and if you get an envelope with too many tickets, please bring the extra ticket up to me. We have grouped into 12 teams or 12 groups. We have 3 groups on each theme. So we have health, economy, education, politics, society, and security. Yes, that's always a hard one. So there is only a certain number of tickets. Try to see if you can negotiate within your team who should go to which theme according to your interests. We have had some changes because of the bad weather. We were hoping to have some of the workshops outside. And the workshops will be facilitated by some of the participants. So the facilitator should also listen now. We will also brief you in the coffee break. I will tell you where the rooms are located after you have selected your workshops. So we have around 3 minutes now. I have the envelopes up here. Please go get an envelope and exchange the tickets within your team. When you are done, hold up your card so I can see that you are done. I have some with 10, I have some with 9, and one with 8, I think. Yes. There is only 10 and 9, so just bring the extra if you have it. Just because of the stream, okay? Yeah, no, there's 10 tickets inside, or 9 tickets, so I think you will need less because you have... No, just take an extra one. If there is no one left, just take the extra and bring it. This is the number of tickets inside. So there are 10 tickets inside this one. So bring back the extra one. 10 tickets, 10 tickets, 10 tickets, 10 tickets. Bring back any extras. 10, 10. Yeah, so you can bring the extra up here. But they get to finish 30 seconds before. Very nice. You can open the envelope and start your negotiations. Please remember that some of you will be facilitators and will not need a ticket. Now I'm looking forward to seeing your cards being held in the air when you are done. And if you have any extra tickets, please bring them to the front. It says that on your list. Thank you. No, it's politics, security, and is one group, but there wasn't space to put all of it. So politics, security, and society is one group. Yeah, it's one thing. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, just extra ones. And there's one. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, I see no pictures in the air. Who is done? Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I see 1, 2. Yeah, just put them here. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, let me count again. I see 1, 2. Please keep your pictures high up in the air so I can see them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, if you want. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Anyone in the back I can see? 18, 19. Yes, I think we're all ready. So please have your ticket in front of you. And if you have a pen, if you don't have a pen, please borrow a pen from your partner or the person next to you after they're done writing. And please sit down. There is 1 minute to the coffee break. All right. So after the coffee break, we will meet in these breakout groups. So it's important that you are ready in the group at 11 o'clock. For the people who are in Health 1, they will be in Maple. Maple is the meeting room upstairs, meeting room 1. People who are in Health 2, they will be in the group called Linden. Linden. It's in the meeting room 2 upstairs. Health 3 will be in Large, and that is just when you go up the stairs outside here, there is a platform with some chairs and some space, and that is where you will have your breakout group. For Education 1, they will be in Beach, and Beach is the TV room across from the sofas when you walk towards the restaurant. Then we have Education 2. They will be in Chestnut, and Chestnut is the children's playing area after the TV room. And then now comes the changes. For Economy 1, Tiago, you will be in here, in Oak. And for Economy 2, Andre, you will also be in Oak. So Economy 1 and 2 in here. For Economy 3, you will be in Spruce. For Society 1, you will be in Texas. Texas. And Society 2, you will be in Willow. And Society 3, you will be in Elderberry. And the last 4 I mentioned, Spruce, Texas, Willow, and Elderberry, these workshops will be located in the big tent where we had the opening ceremony last night. So please take your time if you need to get a code in the coffee break, and also make sure you take time in order to be there at 11 o'clock when we begin. I have a question. I have 2 questions. Yes. Education 3, that was the kids' room, Chestnut. I made a mistake now. I'm sorry, I will do the education again. Education 1, it's because I have some lines here. That was in the TV room, that was correct. Education 2, you're in the foyer, Pine, sorry. Education 2, I changed this. Everyone in Education 2 that noted it wrong, you will be in Pine, in the foyer, the reception area. And then for Education 3, you will be in the kids' playroom, Chestnut. Sorry for the mistake. Any other questions? Yes. Which one? Health 3, you will be in the landing, which is just up the stairs outside here. Any other questions? There is an overview by the reception that our host team has created. If you have any questions about where to go, please ask anyone in the green t-shirts or the green polo shirts. We now have a coffee break until 11 o'clock. It's the APR region that are hosting. Please be in your breakout group at 11 o'clock. See you there.